Nobody told Robert Rosenthal's students they were being watched differently. Nobody told the teachers which children were gifted. The labels were invented. The test scores were fabricated. And yet, by the end of that school year, the children who had been quietly expected to bloom had genuinely bloomed. Their IQ scores rose. Their teachers described them as more curious, more engaged, more alive. The expectation had become the child. You have probably never been told outright that someone believed in you. Not in those exact words. What you received instead were smaller signals: a teacher who paused on your essay a moment longer than the others, a manager who handed you the harder project without explaining why, a parent who asked what you thought instead of telling you what to do. These moments did not feel significant at the time, but something in you registered them. That is the Pygmalion Effect in its quietest form. Not grand declarations of faith, but the slow accumulation of microsignals that tell you, this person thinks you are capable of more. And the strange, slightly unsettling truth is that those signals tend to be correct, not because the person who sent them could see your future, but because they helped construct it. What this episode offers is not a motivational claim. It is something more precise, an account of the specific mechanisms by which expectation travels from one person's mind into another person's behavior and eventually into their measured reality. In 1968, Robert Rosenthal and Lenore Jacobson published a study that became one of the most discussed and most disputed findings in 20th century psychology. The book was called Pygmalion in the Classroom. The setup was straightforward. They administered an IQ test to elementary school students, then told teachers, falsely, that certain children had scored unusually high and were poised for a significant intellectual leap. 8 months later, those children, the ones who had been arbitrarily selected, showed measurably greater IQ gains than their peers. The teachers had not been coaching them differently in any obvious way. There was no special curriculum. What changed was invisible. The quality of attention, the warmth in a correction, the fraction of a second longer a teacher would wait before answering a struggling student's question for them. Rosenthal would later describe 4 channels through which expectation flows: climate, feedback, input, and output, a framework he called the 4-factor theory. The climate channel is the emotional warmth a teacher creates around a child they believe in. The feedback channel is how corrections are delivered, whether criticism comes with care or with dismissal. The input channel is the complexity of the material offered, the assumption baked into the curriculum itself. And the output channel is simply the willingness to wait, to let someone struggle without rescuing them too quickly because you believe they will get there. None of these are dramatic. All of them compound. Picture someone you have worked alongside who seem to expand under one manager and contract under another. The same person, the same skills, but a radically different output depending on whose gaze they operated under. You have probably seen this. You may have lived it. What surprises me most about the Pygmalion research is not the classroom finding. Children are famously responsive to adult cues. It is the replication of the effect in military training, in corporate settings, in athletic coaching. Building on Rosenthal's framework, Dov Eden examined Israeli Defense Force trainees in the 1990s. Trainers who were told their recruits were high-potential produced soldiers who outperformed control groups by a meaningful margin, recruits who had been randomly assigned to that designation. The self is not as stable as we like to think. It is, in part, a reflection of the expectations that surround it. James Baldwin captured something close to this when he wrote, in The Fire Next Time in 1963, that it is a terrible thing for an entire people to surrender to the definition that one's oppressors provide. The same logic operates in the positive direction. The definitions others hold of us can be quietly generative. They create space we then grow to fill. Daniel Kahneman's work in Thinking Fast and Slow draws a relevant distinction here. The mind's fast, automatic system is acutely sensitive to social signals. A glance held a beat too long, a question asked with genuine curiosity rather than polite obligation. These signals bypass conscious analysis. They land before the reasoning mind catches up. This is why high expectation does not need to be stated to be felt. The Pygmalion effect cuts both ways. There is a shadow version called the Golem effect, documented by Dov Eden alongside his positive findings. When supervisors hold low expectations, performance declines to meet them just as reliably as it rises to meet high ones. The gaze shapes the object it rests on. This means the question is not only about who expects things of you, it is also about what you are quietly communicating to the people around you, your children, your colleagues, your students, anyone who inhabits the space of your attention. There is a practice available here, and it is not complicated. It requires only that you choose someone in your life and ask yourself honestly, what do I actually believe they are capable of? Not what they have demonstrated so far, but what you sense is latent. Then ask whether your behavior toward them, the projects you offer, the patience you extend, the corrections you make with care rather than frustration, reflects that belief. You cannot fully control whose expectations surround you, but you can become conscious of the ones you hold. That shift in awareness is not small. It changes the quality of your attention. And attention, as the research keeps insisting, is not neutral. It is one of the most active forces in another person's development. If this kind of thinking interests you, the invisible architecture of how minds shape each other, there is more of it here. Each episode tries to build a slightly more accurate map of how people actually work, rather than how we assume they do. That map is worth having.